So I want to just start with a question. Anyone's welcome to answer it. Why do people think they're afraid of dragons?
We're not.
Bravery. Interesting. So obviously I recognise this does not seem like a contemporary problem. And the truth, yes. In some ways, dragon slaying has become a little trivial. I mean, high caliber artillery from miles and miles away. Yeah, cool. Dragon's gone. Of course, nothing will ever grow in a 10-mile radius properly ever again, but yeah, that does in some way solve the problem. It's funny, we use there's a long tradition of this, obviously. It is a problem that people have been invested in solving for we do not know how long. And the interesting thing is that a lot of what people think is scary about dragons really is not, well, I would not say it is the main thing. Yes, for example, you could say they're fire breath. Now, it isn't fire. Fire is, strictly speaking, a reaction with oxygen, and this is a different reaction that will happen regardless of whether or not there is oxygen around. That is why, for example, dragon fire will eat through concrete fairly easily. They have to go around with this sort of waxy, translucent, almost, well, it is a polymer of sorts, lining their organs so that they do not essentially, well, there is a reason why dragon slaying is a little more complicated than blowing them up, because for all their faults, a dragon is essentially a creature that has evolved to hold the worst of, like, the worst things inside itself. Like, we've got a few classes, like the F class, those are the, okay, again, they don't really fly, it's more that they extrude this sort of membrane with these really sharp, if you ever see it, it's this sort of black, wizened tree-like thing erupts from them, and the thorns or leaves on that tree are so sharp, they basically pinch onto the air, and they will drag themselves upwards. But, so, the other classes of dragon, of course, are different. You have the CL class, which are similar, but slightly, well, not, I won't say light, or I won't say heavier, because of course they're not, it's not really about the weight, again, they don't fly, but they're slightly broader. Then you have the BR class ones, which are these liquidish things. Those are sort of amorphous masses of, well, basically living poison in some very interesting ways. Technically, of course, all of these dragons are carcinogenic, but that very rarely comes up because that would require, okay, hypothetically, if a very tiny bit of dragon touched you, then you would die within the decade, not instantly. But anyway, then of course you have the I-class dragons who have these sort of iridescent. This is the fun thing, of course. These ones especially problematic because not only are they armored with these little like purplish iridescent scales, but they sort of break off weirdly, and it's almost a sort of glass which does interesting things to the lungs. I mean, not things conducive to lungs doing what lungs are supposed to do. But, and of course, I'm sure people know this, we've been dealing with these problems for ages, but I don't think these are why dragons are as scary as that. Because, honestly, I think it comes down to the dragon's mind. It's, and this is not something a lot of people would realize or conceptualize, but the dragon's mind, it's sort of, basically everyone can read the mind of a dragon, and you'd think that would be an advantage against fighting them because you always know what they're thinking. The trouble is that they are very confident and their minds are just, it is like standing under a tsunami or a torrential storm, in that essentially it just washes. You don't even necessarily know it's happening because it's so fast and then it's done, but the dragon's thoughts will just seep into your own if they are not completely washing your thoughts away. So, and this is why historically they have been so hard to slay. It's not because of all their chemical eccentricities, we'll say, but for example, any group of adventurers who have been brave enough to threaten a dragon for a second have torn each other apart. It's that that paranoia and fear and anger, it will just destroy them. And that's not that isn't even the worst, seriously. There are limited accounts of they're not villages anymore, but of former villages which would somehow get lucky. A dragon has come to the end of its life and it is taking its time to die. It is still intact enough that it has not just obliterated the environment around it, but they would take dragons back to their village and pretend to have slain them. The difficulty, of course, is that you can't tell if a dragon is dead from the outside. They sort of take a while, and all that time they are thinking, and they're getting hungry. So, yeah, I think, well, of course, if it's not your hunger, if it's the hunger of a dragon that you've brought into your village because you don't know proper dragon... Okay, dragon slaying is easy, dragon disposal is the hard part. But if it is that hunger, we have seen it destroy villages because, of course, no matter what you eat, no matter how much you eat, it's not going to go away. The dragon's not getting fed. And, yeah, I think that's why we're afraid. Oh, go ahead, question.
So, the one that bites you and that's poisons and then you die weeks later, like a Komodo dragon?
So it doesn't technically bite because they're not jaws. It's more sort of, it's referred to as external digestion. Essentially, by the time anything has entered a dragon's mouth, it is slurry if it's lucky. And of course, a lot of them will filter or baleen feed. They will wait for something to wander by them, forget that it exists, because this is the thing, of course, this is what's terrifying about the dragons. You read their mind and you realize they don't think about us at all. We don't register to them, which is what, like, we're not a threat, we're nothing. They just do not think about us. They just think about themselves. And if you're lucky, you form a dragon cult. If you're unlucky, you just sort of stop doing anything, wander into its mouth. And I think that's why we're afraid of dragons. Any questions? Go ahead.
City of London dragons, do you happen to know what class they are?
This is so. I do not know if the AT class has ever been confirmed. I believe that there is some question about whether or not, hypothetically, if such a thing existed, it would need to have some level of nuclear reaction as part of its metabolism system. Those ones could just be fictional, we aren't entirely sure. Thank you.